You're listening to the AntPod Debate Edition.
Thank you for the introduction, Lexi, and hello and welcome to the AntPod debate about the best conditions to keep ants inside. Before we start, I want to say this podcast can also be heard as an audio only. Links will be shown in the description. Today we're sitting with Casey, Lynn, and maybe Jake. He's a bit late. He just discovered mice and it's not so good, so he's a little bit of a mess. Maybe he'll join, maybe he won't join. Either way, today we are talking about the best conditions to keep ants inside. And I think one of the big questions that there's always between new ant keepers and old ant keepers and different opinions all the way around is rather light affects ants. So should you have them in the light? When they are in a room that you don't enter, are they then in the dark and then you come in and turn the lights on? Does it affect the ants? What about red? What about blackness? Lynn, what are your observations within your ant keeping?
Well, in my opinion, it's better to keep the ants without cover than with cover, because anytime you touch the cover to lift it off to see the ants, you stress them out with vibrations. And this is this is visible with extremely visible with species like Messor, because they will just run around when you touch the nest to lift off the covers. And people are like, oh no, it's because of the lights and the lights spook them. But I actually have a footage of my colonies without the cover, and I shine a flashlight directly inside of the already opened nest, and they don't budge. They don't move at all. They don't care at all.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I completely agree with you. Especially when I'm recording my ants, when I turn my flashlight, my film studio light on and just completely destroys them with brightness, they don't react. But the second I turn the nest or twist the nest a little bit because the light is reflecting annoyingly, then they react. And that's the main reason why I keep all of my colonies in the light today. I've done, except for my Mesobarbarus, but my Mesobarbarus have been used to being in the dark for 2 years before I got them. And every time I've tried removing the lid, they just move out in the outworld. The queen moves out in the outworld. Everything just goes very badly. And then for that one colony, I keep them in the dark. But all of my other colonies, I keep in the light. I mean, I currently have a Singularis queen who's going strong alone for now at least. I put her in the dark just because I want her to have the best conditions possible, and then no disturbing the queen. But if you have a colony that you want to look at every day, I think it's a lot better to have them in the light rather than in the dark, because then if you disturb them, you don't disturb them as much. What are your thoughts, Casey?
Yeah, I definitely keep all mine in the light. Not direct sunlight or anything like that, but just I don't keep covers on any of my nests or anything like that. I definitely agree that, like, I think it's definitely more vibration that gets them excited, because when I flip my bedroom light on or any of the lamps or anything, nobody cares at all. I keep like a pocket flashlight on me and I shine that in the nest, and they don't even act like they notice it. So yeah, I definitely think it's more vibration. But with when I'm founding queens, I do generally try to keep them in the dark, or at least in a darker spot. Just because, like you said, I would like to keep them more as comfortable as possible. Whereas when they get more workers, I think the queen gets less stressed. So like once I have like 5 or 6 workers or something like that, then usually I'll start doing the light conditioning or whatever, getting them used to the light.
Yeah, I think some of the interesting things I've seen with my Nicobarensis is if I blow at them in the outworld, they go crazy, and you can kind of see the news of something weird happen follows throughout into the nest. So workers are going a little bit weird all the way around, and the news kind of drags into the nest. And I feel like whenever you take that vibration off, it only takes a few workers to say something just happened for the whole colony to say what just happened with the whole vibration. Whereas if you just flash a light on them, I still think, even though if you're flashing the light on them, we have in my apartment, I have a wooden floor, and I still think it's more that my floor is creating vibrations as I'm walking over to them, rather than my flashlight itself. I'm 100% on team vibration rather than light. But what do you guys think of a red cover? because personally, I still think it's vibration, and I don't think I've ever really used red covers on any of my colonies. Casey, is that something you've used?
Yeah. I have a couple red covers for my Tar Heel stuff, but yeah, I do use the red covers here and there, but I don't think, because I can't find any definite information on what light spectrum ants can see. It's just a general consensus that most animals can't see red light. And so when I use the red cover, I know that it's primarily only letting through red light, but I use it to just make it dark. I don't think that the ants can't see red light, if that makes sense, because I'm not totally sure. So I don't think it's dark in there to them. I just think it's darker than like ambient light.
Yeah. I also think it really depends on the redness. If you get like a very, very easy to see through red cover, I don't think it does anything, just because, again, it creates the more darkness if you have like a really dark red cover. But yeah, as a man who haven't used them, I don't talk too much about them. Lynn, what do you think? Lynn, of course, you are in so many different Discord servers. You must have seen so many different stories of this whole thing. What do you think, and what have you seen the community kind of think?
Well, I personally also don't really use the red covers. The only nests that have red covers are the Maculatus and the Barbaricus and the Nicobarensis at this moment, because they're in the other room, my animal room. And during the winter times, I let up the thing that blocks out the window, so the sun can shine inside. And when it hits the nest directly, they get a little bit uncomfortable in the long time. So that I block it out with the red cover. Plus, it's pretty dusty in that room because of the gerbils. So the red covers get dusty, but the nest does not. So it's my way of being lazy as well. As for what I've seen others doing, the part where people say that ants can see through the red stuff goes like a wildfire. So people are often saying that you can use the red cover, but it doesn't really do much, and you can better leave it off completely because it doesn't matter that much. Yeah, that's what I mostly see happen nowadays.
And regarding the topic, the best condition, what would you then personally say is the best thing for viewing your ants?
Well, if you have the patience, you should keep your ants in the dark, or your founding queen in the dark, just for them to be comfortable, to be really, really focusing on only her brood. But if you really want to check up on your ants, like see how they're doing, just watch from a distance, stuff like that, then it's better to put them like on a towel or on the bubble foil and just leave them exposed inside of a room somewhere, not in direct sunlight. Yeah, that's what I do with most of my ants. Unless I really, really want them to move, then I place them somewhere where it's a little bit more vibratey, and then the nest goes on towels to create a better space.
Yeah, I've also seen I personally, this is just my thoughts. It's not necessarily what I've done in the past, but I think I would say that you should keep them in the dark, but then also, like you say, keep them on this kind of foamy like fabricated stuff. I know if you've seen an Ant Antics unboxing, you'll see like a little bit of a foam around everything, and this foam has a little bit of like a devibrationer inside. So if you vibrate, the foam does a little bit less vibration, and I think it's ideal to actually keep your ants on a kind of layer, because I know a lot of people, especially young kids, just no hate, but that's just what I've seen online, is they put it on a drawer or something, and then you close the drawer, and just that you have to take the drawer out creates an enormous vibration, because everything shakes. It's a big earthquake for the colony inside. And I think it's a lot better if you have a queen, keep her in a place and don't look at her for a few weeks to a few months, depending on how soon you've catched her. And if you have a colony of a few workers, I would say put them in an open space, but keep them in the dark, and then when they have around 50 to 100 workers, I would introduce light as a constant thing. That's at least what I've done with my colonies, and as far as I know, it worked well. Casey, what are your final thoughts of lights and dark?
I actually just listened to you. The foam pad or the not paper towel, the foam pad or like dish towel or even a full-size towel if you need that much space. But yeah, that shock absorber / vibration inhibitor, whatever you want to call it, that is a world of difference. But like, let's definitely put some emphasis on that. But light, for the most part, I don't think really matters too much. As long as there's zero vibration, or yeah, I've never had an issue with light. All my colonies have been raised in light, so I don't think it's that much of a difference.
No, I cannot say anything, but I agree with you. I kept all my colonies in the dark. Every time I recorded them, then it went crazy because I had to remove the lid and remove everything around. And today, it's not really an issue. I've told myself in the past that it was because they got used to me recording them, but I realized that because I don't need to remove any lids or do anything kind of vibrate towards them. All right, so that's the first kind of topic regarding how to keep the ants in the best conditions. A thing that many ant keeper faces every day with keeping exotic ants or keeping native ants in a colder room is temperature. What is the best way of heating the ants? Do you use a heat mat? Do you use a heat cable? Should you just heat your entire room? Or use a heat lamp? There's quite a few different ways. And Casey, what do you do?
D, all of the above, actually.
Wait, what?
So my room, generally, because it's winter, I'm keeping it at about 68 degrees. But like during the day, I want a timer, but when I'm home during the day, I'll flip, like during daylight hours, I'll flip my lamp on. All my lights come on. My Pogonomyrmex occidentalis, I keep their dry side of their nest on a heat mat, and then on my wood ants, I'm actually kind of running an experiment on them. So one colony has the heat cable on it on their dry side, and then the other colony is just room temperature. But yeah, I use all of the above. I originally switched to the lamp because I wanted to see if it would make the harvester ants build an anthill. That didn't work, unfortunately. And then the heat mats I already had from previous pets, and then the lamp. Well, no, I already went over the lamp. The heat cable was just, yeah, that's just a good thing to have, is heat cable. You can heat multiple colonies at a time with it, and you can set your nests however you want when you have the heat cable as well, rather than the mat. You have to set the nest on there a particular way or whatever. So, but yeah, D, all of the above.
Right, I can say that 68 Fahrenheit is about 19 degrees Celsius. But what is your preferred heating way then? Is it cables or?
I'd prefer to heat the whole room. All the people I know that sell ants or have a absorbent amount of colonies, they all try to temperature control their rooms.
And when you then heat them, is there a special way you control that you don't cook the ants, or is it just what to do?
I just keep the heat on the dry side of the nest, and I let the ants. I think the ants have better judgment to hang out somewhere where it'll kill them.
Yeah, all right. Well, I can say that I am heating my room with the oil radiator. My room radiator is very small, but it's at max, but it only heats to around 21 degrees when it's snowy outside, so it doesn't really do anything with my leaf cutters. I have a oil radiator that just runs, and after talking with Rich on our last episode 29, I know that I have to order this thermostat regulator. I have an expensive one, but it's only a 2 amp fuse, so it can only use for heating cables. Initially bought for my leaf cutters, but the second I plugged in my oil radiator, the fuse blew. But in the last episode, Rich he sent over a very good one, so I'm definitely gonna buy that one because that can regulate a lot better. But I am using an oil radiator that is just turning on and off throughout the day, keeping the room nice and hot. But with my exotic ants, such as my Nikos and my Novomessa cocorelli, I have a heat cable, and pretty much the first day I put the heat cable in under them, because I know the room is already heated. So the first day I just put it on the side. Then I look at the ants. The ants move over to the side with the heat. Then I look. Then I take the heat cable a little bit further in, and I kind of over a week's time I move the reheating cable around to see what's the best condition. Because if the ants move away from the heat, then it's too hot. But if they move towards it, they like it. So I personally love heat cables because you can run them back and forward to give double amount of heat, or at least more heat. And that way my Novomessa, they loved one cable a little bit too much, so the whole colony moved on one cable. But as soon as I took it back and forward, now all of the brood is on the heated side, and most of the colony is on the colder side. So I feel like that has worked very nicely for my taste, at least. So I definitely love heat cables. I also have a heat mat, but the problem is just that it can't heat as many colonies at once. But Lynn, let's hear your story. How do you heat your ants?
Oh God. Where'd that start? My maculatus have their own heat mats, and they have multiple because every they are in the X6, yes, the S6 nest from Wakushi, the laptop nest, and they have like a smaller 10 by 10 centimeters mat on like the verticals. Is it vertical? Yes, the vertical nest part. And then they have another one, or a slightly bigger one, like a double size, on the bottom parts. So they have all heat mats. During summer, I turn off all heating in my house because during summer my whole house heats up, and I actually have trouble getting it cooler instead of getting it warmer. Even though most of the ants actually love the heat. It's even going as far as the natives enjoying the heat much more than my African species, so that's kind of funny. And then
how can you see that they enjoy it?
Well, they're active, they're thriving, there's a lot of brood, they're frolicking around, they're really aggressive on their food. And my maculatus is like sitting inside their nest and being a little bit pissed because of the heat, because it's harder for them to escape it. But they don't like the cooling blocks either, so that's the thing. It's also their natural behavior is during the hot days when it's really hot outside, they stay inside of their nest, of course, because then it's safer for them. Well, stuff like Nasi's Niger is like, yo, we go out, we feast today. And then I also have heat cables because I find that the mini hearts are easier to heat with a heat cable running in front of the hearts. And then I make them stuck by using a different nest or cards. Then I can also see the brood very well because they stack all of the brood against the glass. So that's another version that I use. That's pretty much all I have. I cannot heat. And I use my computer to heat the smallest room that I'm in right now, because I have a few of the colonies are over here with me. Some are in diapause and some are not. But I cannot it's if I don't heat at all, or don't extra heat with the computer, it's 20 degrees. The sensor says. And Bicarinatum, Maculatus, and Apache condilla, the Aerodimyrmex, and the Mesocephalodus are in this room as well. And if I turn on my PC and start gaming, really active, the temperature goes up to 22 to 23 on the sensor, which means it's a cozy 26 inside of the setups.
Lovely. You said something interesting, and you said a cooling block. Is that how you cool the ants? I've never heard of this.
Yeah, sometimes if it gets too hot, you can put like a cooling block on top of a fan and let the fan spread around the cool air. And I also have this water hydration system that needs cool blocks inside of the water to spread cool air inside of the room. And you can also put, you have cooling rocks and cooling, the cool pads, and you put them near a nest when the nest is overheating. So never on top of the nest because the ants will freak out, of course, and you might actually accidentally freeze the ants. But if you put it near the nest, the ants can cool off inside at that area, at that site where the cooling block is at, if they want to, which mine don't. But it's an option. And I also give the gerbils the same option, but they also hate it. So that's
I
great.
guess the good thing is just to look at the ants and see how they adapt. Again, also with the heating cable, are they moving towards it or away from that? It's what I've learned over the past, except for my leaf cutters. For my leaf cutters, I need to look at temperatures directly to see the fungus. But generally, I don't really use any information online regarding hydration or heating because I follow the ants. Do they move towards the humid side? Do they move towards the heated side? And that way, kind of see how to keep the different colonies. These cooling blocks is just like it's just a frozen block because I was imagining something you had plugged in or something.
Yeah, it's nothing plugged in. It's really like something from the freezer that you can use. You can also use like cooled sand that you've hidden in the fridge.
Oh.
And generally just stuff from the freezer or the fridge that you've cooled down and then lay close to the nest, or like a wet towel, stuff like that.
Yeah, so just really simple things actually.
Yeah, it's pretty much cool block.
Yeah.
From
What is
shopping.
what's your preferred heating way then?
Well, if my house was more isolated, I would have loved to have like a heated room, like a perfect 26 degrees inside of a room, like perfect in my opinion, that's the perfect temperature for most of the species, and just have the whole room like that. But yeah, that's not really an option.
No.
Not yet, at least. So I think the most that I have are heat mats compared to cable. I have 2 cables and only one of the cables is in use. And if my Subnudus moves out of their tar heel ends, I don't think I would use that cable anymore. So for me, heat mats are the way to go. And I have a lot of heat mats.
And why is that then? It's just because why?
Well, if you take the Maculatus, for example, they have 4 nests, 4 laptops, and it means an upper part and a lower part. So the upper part has already 4 for each section, and the lower part has 2 because they are wider.
Yeah.
And then we have the Maculatus in this room, which is a smaller colony, and they have a large one in front of their big nest, and then they have a smaller one below the smaller nest, and then with the Saturns and put one in the back. So there's another heat mat, and there's just heat mats everywhere.
Oh yeah, that's the way to go then. Casey, what is your way of? Do you have any way of cooling your room? I didn't really think of actually cooling a room, but yeah, it can be as big as a problem as heating it up. Do you have any ways, Casey?
So I generally, like in the summertime, I just use the house AC. So my house has central air. But yeah, I usually just let that cool the room, and then I make up the difference with the various sources of heat that I have. But yeah, I can't have cool ants from other places, and so so generally just ambient temperature is fine for all my ants.
Yeah, it's always different when you don't need to actually heat the ants as much as other guys. All right. Well,
I just know the pogos need, like, in the summertime, the pogos want to be like somewhere between 80 Fahrenheit and 90 Fahrenheit, and so yeah, I can't do that with anything. So that's why I bought the heat lamp, because that'll get the nest up to like 90, or at the very least it'll get the foraging area up to 90.
Yeah. I think, hang on, let me just, what is 90 is?
Like
32 degrees. 32. That's the thing, it's American, because that's actually also what I'm aiming for with my Nova Messer. I always kept them at like 24 and they never did well. And now I'm heating them in a heated room with the heating cable running back and forward, so it's hot in there. I think it's around, again, I don't use any probes, so I actually don't know. But it's hot because I know I know that the probe in my Nico says 27, and that only runs back and forward one time, so not double. But yeah, the way I cool my room, ladies and gentlemen, Antimatter has also joined. He has now been invited to join the fun. Hello, Jake.
Hey, host. I'm not late, am I? I think
Only-
I am.
Only a little bit, but that's how it is. It's all right. We're changing the recording schedule a little bit. But the way I cool my room in summer is simply by avoiding heating it up in the first place. So I only have one door to... the end room is always a closed door because I have cats and they are not allowed in here without me sitting and looking at them. So I just have my door to my garden closed and with a curtain in front. And that way the room never really heats up. But it also means that I have no natural light in this room ever. And that is something I really do not really appreciate. But that's how it is when you have leaf cutters, because that's a very safe way of keeping the cool without having to use any energy. Jake, now that you're here, we may as well just ask you the first questions to you as well. We have discussed a little bit about rather light effects ant colonies. Do you keep your ants in the light or on the red covers or in the dark? And what is your thoughts on the subject?
Well, all of my ants are basically out in the light, except for the Polyrhacus ones when they're just starting out, because I find they actually do seem to care. Like, unlike most ants, they don't really mind, but the Polyrhacus, they will stall sometimes if they're kept like too bright. Whereas, I think everything else is fine. I just keep them in the light.
Yeah, we discussed earlier that it was we all kind of agreed that it was more the vibrations that actually caused troubles rather than the light itself. What do you think of red covers then? Are they the same as in the light or more as in the dark, or are they somewhere in the middle?
I think they might as well be kind of, well, I guess you're cutting out some of the light, but they're pretty much, I think, the same as having them open, to be honest.
Oh.
It's kind of, that's
Controversial.
that's my view.
Oh, getting the comments fired up now, but that's all right.
I think it does make it a little bit duller, but I don't think it makes it dark, if you get what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, we all kind of agreed that keep them in the light and just give everything to the vibrations cause. The other topic we have just about ended is how we actually heat our colonies. So, how do you heat your colonies?
Well, my big tanks and the Tetramorium, they've all got like their own heat mats, and whereas everything else that needs heating, I just stick it in my little box in the corner of my room. And
that's true.
I just got me a little thermometer or thermostat going in and a heat wire that goes all around it, and it just keeps the inside at a nice about 25.5 degrees ish.
Yeah. So is this a DIY project or what's this box?
Oh yeah, it's basically a tool cabinet, but then I just kind of lined all the walls with a little bit of a like bubble wrap and stuff like that and foam to kind of insulate it. So yeah, it just kind of acts like an incubator.
Lovely. Yeah, and for those who don't know, an incubator is a board. I guess you can also do some more kind of a DIY, but it's a board product that you just plug in and set a certain temperature. But again, if you heard the episode 28, I think, with Paul from Ant Ramblings, he also said that he believed that the future would be that you just generally kept all of your ants in these kind of incubators, and they just became a little bit more DIY, more meant for that job kind of thing. But yeah, Jake, do you then have a way of cooling the ants down in the hot summer days?
Well, I'm a bit like you. I just keep the most of the light out as much as I can, and then I just like stay out of the room and keep the door shut, and that kind of buffers me a few degrees. And then the incubator itself, when it's like not on, it kind of keeps the heat out as well. So I can just about most of the time keep it below 30, even on like the hottest days. Yeah, I just make sure they've always got plenty of water, I guess. But it does get hot sometimes.
Yeah, I think what you say with keeping them humid, keeping them hydrated, at least having a water source is very important. because they can very quickly dry out if you have a dry test tube and it's very hot. It's not a good combination. I've also seen a lot of people more question rather than saying you should do it, but put the ants in the sun, in a sunspot. Personally, I wouldn't really recommend this just because it can get very, very hot. It can get 40 degrees, maybe even more in a window. So what if you are thinking of doing it, because I have seen quite a few people do similar things, is to observe what the ants do. Some species can handle it. At least in the outworld, you will see in an outworld that the ants move out and actually stand to get the sun in the outworld. But the outworld is like outside. Outside ants are meant to be heated. But the brood, the eggs, the larvae, the pupae, maybe not able to withstand the same heat. So if the sun is hitting your nest, I would make 100% sure that they had a spot without getting heated, without getting any sun, and then I would follow the ants to see whether the ants stay in the sun or if they move towards the shadow. Because if they are moving towards the shadow, get them out of the sun. Generally, I would just say don't put them in the sun. All right, Lynn, you suggested this next one, and I don't know if you just want to say what your thoughts were behind it, heating native colonies?
Personally, I think every colony, even the native ones, do love a little bit of heat. Especially, like, people always say, oh, you can keep them on room temperature. And then the next day you hear complaints about last year's nitrogen being slow growing. But if you actually give them the opportunity to have a little bit of heating next to them, they will flourish so much. They will have they will have such amount. My words. They will have a very big boom of growth because of the increased temperature. They will absolutely love it. They will thrive on it.
Yeah. I mean, I've used, of course, the central heating, meaning that all of the colonies have been heated. And I don't want to say I don't believe you, because I definitely think you're onto something on that point. But also, I've noticed that my colonies all tend to, it may just be my native ants, they all tend to kind of go into this weird stage in summer, in like kind of in pre-hibernation. The first year it was only with my fuscas, and I heard that was quite normal, and my hercs. But this year it was also the flavos and the nightjars. And I discussed a little bit rather it was due to them being heated, that as soon as it dropped, they kind of felt like summer had ended. What do you think of that, Lynn? Is it just some weird saying, or do you think there's anything to it?
No, I wouldn't really know, because in summer I don't heat my ants because of the room being 30 degrees. Yeah. So the temperature can go on a rainy day back to 22 and then up to 30 again the next day, or in weeks differences. And my Formica rufibarbus, they used to be in my computer room. They would not stop laying eggs. They would not stop. No matter what I did. I actually had to force them to stop with by withholding their food and getting them to a cooler place. Even though the PC room at that moment was only 20 degrees, they would not stop. So I think it's, I'm not sure what causes it, because my fuscas also quit already in September, or even earlier, I'm not sure. But the rufibarbus was in the exact same situation, and they just flourished, and they didn't stop. So it might be different per colony and different per situation. It can also be that the ants might know that if it's very warm during a summer, it can mean that the winter will be very cold. That might also be an option.
Rufibarbus and Neorufibarbus, I don't know if this makes a difference, but you were talking about them going into winter. Neorufibarbus and Rufibarbus are the furthest north-reaching ant species across the entire planet. So they actually inhabit the near Arctic Circle. So not quite the Arctic Circle, but like just outside of that.
Yeah, I guess that makes them more adaptable to just wait to the last second.
Just a huge range on that particular species. Well, those two species.
It's a fascinating topic. I guess it's not as much something you see, Casey, as you just. I don't know, but I imagine when I think of America, I always think it's quite a bit hotter than Europe, at least, because some of America is. But Jake, you of course have the same native colonies and exotic colonies, and heating some others. Do you think it's worth heating natives?
If you've already got kind of a setup for heating them going, I don't think there's any harm in it for sure, just sticking them on, because mine definitely enjoy it. I wouldn't go out and kind of buy them their own heating because I'm stingy, but yeah, if you've got one kind of going, they do enjoy it, and it does definitely make them grow faster, like 100%. Yeah, especially like me, Lasius flavus. They've kind of taken off proper booming since I stuck them in the incubator, even though they should be hibernate.
Oh, that's a brave move, my guy. Brave move. But
I got 2 colonies, luckily. One of them is actually hibernating, but yeah, but I got 2, so it was one can go and stay awake and see what happens.
Lasius flavus experiment right here.
Hi, it's Lexi from Pour More Art. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ant Pod, and please visit my ant and spider shop at www.pourmoreart.ca. We're a Canadian business shipping ant and spider keeping supplies worldwide, specializing in test tube accessories and a variety of hybrid formicaria, glass outrolls, and enclosures. Enjoy the show.
Well, the next topic is on the paper, vibration. Does it matter? And I think we have definitely discussed that it does matter. And I think for all people, it's something I've heard in the past that if you have a colony that's struggling, I would personally just recommend putting them as far away from and slamming door, opening and closing a walkway where you're walking. Because again, every time you walk, if you just have a colony on a desk, that every time you walk past it, this is only I'm saying this due to my personal preference of my personal observations with my Mesobarbers. When I walk next to them, I can hear them inside the nest saying, and they're in the dark and they're in the good, and they still go crazy whenever I walk near them. So if you have a species that may be eating the brood, that may be doing bad, try to think, are they in a vibration zone? Because near a door, every time you close a door, even though you do it carefully, it gives a vibration. And it may not be anything to a human, but to an ant colony, it may be a small earthquake. And for a sensitive ant colony, that may be enough for them to say, maybe I should eat this larvae instead of help it grow. Because that's, I don't know why, but that's how ants think sometimes. At least it looks like it. So I would say vibration. If you have a sensitive species, try to keep them away from the walking zones or the doors. But it may not be possible for everyone. It may just be something to have in the back of your mind. But another question I've received quite a lot on Instagram, on TikTok, is I have so many ant colonies and they are right next to each other. Can the colonies sense each other? Do they know they're next to each other? Do they want to go to war with each other? Casey, what do you think? Do you have colonies next to each other, and do you think it affects the different colonies?
I would imagine they can smell each other if you do have like an open top. If you have like an open top nest or foraging area, but for the most part, I don't think my ants notice each other because all my nests are Tar Heel nests also, so they can't really see each other either. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know if they can smell each other. I would assume it's possible.
Do you believe?
I'm on the side. I really don't think they do.
Well, explain.
Yeah. Well, the ants, the pheromones themselves that are for trails, they're kind of quite volatile, but they're kind of pretty universal. They're not really like special to your colony that much. Whereas the actual like scent on them is a lot less volatile. So if you put your nose like right up to it, you can sense it. Like if you put your antenna in it, you can kind of smell it like that. But it doesn't really evaporate. I was watching there's a professor in America, like Deborah Gordon, and yeah, she was talking about all of this sort of stuff. And yeah.
What do you think, Glenn?
Well, I actually have this video. I've seen this video of Messer Cephalotus in a duo nest with another colony of, I think it was Camponotus aurifentris.
A duo nest.
Yeah, it has a nest with 2 sections, and the ants cannot reach each other, but they're side by side in the same setup. And I'm actually trying to find the video, but that colony could definitely. I cannot type and see it at the same time. Holy shit! But those colonies could definitely know that there was a different colony in the other side because there was a little gap in the acrylic, and they could smell each other. So I think most setups are actually pretty airproof, and the ants don't walk side by side because there's usually solid material in between. So I think in most cases, it doesn't matter. They don't smell each other. They don't see each other. They're not like, oh, that's another ant I see climbing on top of that wall. But if they're like really close or in the same setup, like that video that I've seen, then they might notice each other.
That sounds a lot like there's the dark forest theory for like intelligence in the universe. And it's maybe ants are a bit like that, where it's sometimes kind of it's best to stay invisible rather than be found by like another colony or something like that. So maybe they do or have like evolved to kind of not show up on the radar a little bit, if you get what I mean.
Interesting to actually see if you have like a timid colony actually reacting. I'm personally more sided towards. I mean, it's not. I guess you both said the same. But I generally don't think it matters, but that's just due to when a setup is next to each other, there's generally quite a big gap, and if you have a lid on the outwall, there's not really that much airflow flowing in and out. I think if you have a situation like Lynn explained, where they live up literally a wall next to each other, that they can sense each other and maybe act weird towards each other. But I don't think as an ant keeper it's something we need to think about. Because even if I opened my outwalls of both my colonies and put them next door, I don't think the airflow will fly up and go down to the other outwall and let them go in this attack mode. And I also think, from what I've seen in the wild, that a colony won't attack another colony unless they have like direct contact. So maybe they can sense there's another colony, but I don't think that they will really start attacking each other until they have a meet where they actually meet face to face with 2 foraging workers, and then they may start this attack because now they know there is a colony. Do you have anything to add, Jake?
Well, I'm guessing some ants, like, they must really be fully invisible because you got the thief ants, which kind of live in the colony, but they're kind of tucked away right next door to it. They'll have a little tunnel next to it, and I'm guessing some ants maybe are fully invisible, and maybe others are a bit more smelly. I know army ants, the people that like go out looking for them, you normally like smell them as well, kind of because they stink. But I guess you can afford to smell really bad if you're like 100,000 ants. Like.
Yeah. If you have the numbers with you, it doesn't really matter if someone attacks.
It's kind of like a warning of like, go away.
Yeah. Lynn, you've sent a few pictures of the video. I think it may just be best for Lynn to just share this video on her story when this podcast comes out. Just because I don't know how to explain what to search for. Quite a weird. It's not an English video title name, at least.
For me, it is.
Do you read that in English?
Yeah, one Formicarium and 2 ant species, part 2, Messer Cephalotus and Camponotus aurifentris in a duo nest.
Hang out. Oh yeah. Oh wait, I actually see. Oh yeah. When I clicked on it, but here on Discord it says E.G. Formicarium, not English.
It's Russian, I think, or maybe Ukrainian. I'm not sure.
And it was only posted 2 weeks ago. Damn, that's a new video. 20,000 views. Okay. This guy does something. Yeah, so it's called Antsight, or that's the YouTuber, and one Formicarium with 2 ant species, part 2, Messer Cephalotus. and Camponotus something.
Howdy Fenris.
Exactly. Lynn, do you have any final thoughts on this topic?
No, I don't think so.
I can respect that. So the next point is the best way to add humidity, the best condition to have this humid environment. And that's of course because most ant species, they need to either create the humidity themselves, like Camponotus, by licking the larvae so they stay moist, or just live in a general humid environment to, well, still make sure everything is moist. And of course, you can have a naturalistic setup where you have to hydrate the setup by spraying water, and you can have a test tube where everything is kind of self-sufficient, and you just need to make sure that there's water. And of course, then you have the proper ant nest where you even need to hydrate a sponge, a white tongue block, a gypsum block. There's a few different methods. But Jake, do you have any preferred ways of making sure that the colony is in the correct humidity?
Gradient. Like, always have a gradient. That's my advice. Like, if you got a gradient, you're sorted then, and you can kind of tell as well if you got a good big gradient and they go, let's say, to like, I don't know, the middle, you'll know that they don't like it too humid, like, and that sort of thing. Really, you can find out quite a lot as long as they got a gradient to begin with, and go from there. And definitely, I do love gypsum as well for kind of holding the humidity and all of that. Can't beat gypsum.
No, I was actually very surprised. I had a Flavus that lived in a gypsum, and I wanted to move them out. So I didn't hydrate the nest in, I don't know how long. It must have been 2 or 3 months, but it's Flavus, they're stubborn, and they had a hydration. They had water source. And when I finally did forcefully move them out, the block was still wet to the touch. So I knew that the ants must have been drinking water, and that way kind of hydrated. Actually, to be honest, what I've seen now is if you give a colony, especially my Nikos, I haven't hydrated them forever, because every time I give them sugar water, they drink it all so fast that the nest just becomes extremely humid, and that's because it's heated. So on the heated parts, I just can't see through because they drink so much sugar water. So they drink all the sugar water, and it becomes extremely humid inside, and they kind of self-sufficient. And kind of keeps the humidity in themselves. It's the same with my leaf cutters. At a certain point, as long as they get leaves and water, they have been self-hydrating everything. But Lynn, what do you think? What's the best way for you to hydrate and keep the humidity up?
Well, I'm actually pretty bad at knowing when I have to hydrate my ants, and I forget. So that's why I keep a lot of species that like it a little bit on the drier side. But personally, most of my colonies are big enough that I will also self-hydrate everything. That's the way I like it. Except for my Pachecondella. She somehow, for some reason, likes it a little bit humid. So right now she's in one of the many available tubes that she has, and it's a bamboo tube. And I can see if it's hydrated enough that it will have condensation on the top of the tube. And when it's getting lower, and when I see less and less condensation, I know that I have to rehydrate it. And that's usually, or at least in this case with that setup, how I know when I have to hydrate it. But most of my ants are self-hydrating.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said in the beginning regarding when to hydrate and how often. It's not for fun that people called me. I can't quite Aquaman. Aquaman, that's one of the things at least. Because I'm very bad at hydration. All products I've used pretty much until I've used the Wakushi gypsum products, I've always overhydrated or underhydrated with cotton. With the aesthetic mesh nest, I was used to hydrating once a week, but I could see that the colony moved into the outworld to move towards the test tube, and then I could see that I was too late. The cotton was bone dry. My room is heated. It's a mess. and I love when the colonies are big enough to kind of maintain it all. But what I found with the gypsum nest, at least the Wakushi gypsum nest, is by adding a little bit of water every week, only a little bit and only every week, I've found that it has worked well. And for the bigger colonies, they kind of maintain it all. Anything you two want to add before we go to the next topic?
I just would say you have gotten a lot better with your hydrating. I haven't seen like a tank with an inch of water in the bottom for quite a while. Like,
No.
unless you've been hiding them. But
you learn something very slowly, right? I mean, my Nikos, one of the reasons the mites problem got a little bit. I mean, they still have mites, but I think the reason they've done so well with the Nikos was because they self-hydrated the outworld as well, so the old dirt and the old ant debris and stuff like that was also getting hydrated and moist, and it was a very bad combination. So that's all. I guess that's also something we're gonna. It's actually the next topic. Oh, perfect. The way into the next topic, because when do you actually take out the protein? So of course we have done a big ant keeping 101. I need to somehow find a way of actually putting it up first, but we did a big podcast a few months ago where we talked about everything very slow and steady of what to feed them and the pros and cons. We've also done an episode recently of the best protein to feed them, so you can scroll back and see that one or hear that one if you want. But generally, when do you actually take the protein out? So I'm just going to start with my thoughts. In a test tube, I take it out after 2 days or 1 day sometime. In a nest, 48 hours. And generally, I use 48 hours because I didn't take the food out for a few weeks because I followed the advice that it would go dry, which it did, except for the species that self-hydrated and they made everything go wet. And that's how I lost my Caribera diversa, due to poor maintenance. So, Lynn, when should you take out your protein?
With the test tubes and small colonies, easy to maintain colonies, I also say 1 or 2 days, depending on how active they are and how much brood they have and if they really like the protein or not. The bigger colonies, well, yeah. Personally, I don't take out the trash that much. Not at all, actually. Might be a mistake waiting to happen. Probably, possibly, who knows? But all of my setups are really dry. Yeah, and like most of my species, like the meat ants, they actually make the bits and trash so small that you cannot pick it up with the tweezers. So I cannot really clean it very easily. And then I'm usually like, oh, I'm gonna wait because they will outgrow this outworld really fast, and then I'll add a new clean outworld for them. And with the big Carinatum, it's even worse because they're so tiny that they often they also have the tiny rubble everywhere. And every time I try to pick something up, there's ants inside, and it kind of frustrates me. And I've recently bought a Hoover, so that's really helpful with cleaning out the ants, except for the maculatus, who are so aggressive that if I stick my hands and take out the trash, they will swarm my arm.
Do they then bite you, or how does the maculatus go?
Majors will bite. The smaller ones will just run around, and often they will run so fast that they accidentally slip off and fall off my arms. And if they walk under the cabinets, I probably won't find them again for a while.
Yeah, it's the thing with big colonies. It's generally I have the same problem with all my bigger colonies. If they manage to escape, if you ever had an escapee, I just hope that they come back because they can get very far and they can just run under the table and drop down in some of the mess behind everything. And it's just, I understand what you do. Jake, when do you take out the protein and what do you do with your big colonies?
Well, I'm like really bad, I guess. Normally, I'll stick the protein in, and to be honest, I can leave it up to like 4 days a lot of the time. But I always make sure not to give them like too much. So they'll kind of eat most of it and there'll be like minimal waste, if any, which kind of helps stop anything getting too established. But I do make sure that I do get a bit of cotton, and if I've got a test tube set up, they've all got little test tube pods, so I can get a bit of cotton, dip it in some water, and then give it a good scrub out inside, like every time, just to make sure it's all clean. And the big colonies, well, the Kerabera, I haven't actually ever taken anything out of there. I think worms and all of that
That's
sort of
also
thing.
naturalistic setup.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't have to do anything there. The Tetramorium though, they're like a weird one. It's almost every about 3 weeks I have to take out their giant trash. But what I do is because they'll eat so much, they'll completely turn like a cockroach or a mealworm just into like pure shell. So there is like absolutely nothing for any mites to eat. And I'll just tip all the shells into another kind of little container I've got. And slowly the ants will leave and they'll just have like pure shells in there. And I'll kind of chuck them in every few days. But because it's quite sealed, I don't think any mites are a problem, and there's nothing for them to eat. So yeah, leave it every about 3 weeks, and then it's like full, and then I chuck it out and repeat.
Yeah, I think it's well said. Definitely the thing, mites won't come if they eat everything. That's what happened. That's what I did wrong. I didn't clean, and I fed too much. And when I had dry setups, but what I didn't realize was how humid the ants themselves have actually created the outwells. So what I do now with at least the Nikos, because the Nikos self-hydrate like crazy, so I just don't have lids on the outwells, and I have 2 outwells to hopefully create a little bit of airflow between one another, and that way I just keep the outwells as dry as possible, and whenever I feed them, I don't really think I need to take it out because it is dry and they do eat everything, but yeah, I don't want another mite disaster. The next topic is a topic I know Lynn has a lot of thoughts upon, because that's the first question she asks me every time I have a colony that is dying. Lynn, when should you take out sugar and sugar water stuff?
Well, I have as a base rule, if your ant or ant colony ants cannot drink what you give them in a day, you've given them too much. And it's pretty important to keep your eye out on if you feed them too much or not, because if sugar water molds or goes bad, the whole colony can die from it just by drinking a small sip. It gets spread so fast between all of the colony members, and they will just die of sugar water poisoning, and it's pretty bad. So that's why my suggestion is always to never leave it in the outworld for more than 3 days, and to just don't overfeed your ants. It's not necessary to feed them sugar water like so much that they have so much left over that they don't finish it all.
What about stuff like sugar snaps? Would you say the same thing to that?
Well, I've never tried sugar snaps yet. I actually have
the different sugar solutions, sunburst, and all of this.
Sunburst.
Yeah.
Well, this sunburst I have on my desk is now still good. I smell if it's good or not, because they smell. If it goes bad, they smell. But sunburst, I don't know if it's meant to be diluted. I don't dilute it myself. But if you have a feeder and you put sunburst in and you leave it out for a while, you think, oh no, the ants are not really thirsty because they don't drink that much. It's because the bottom of the feeder gets crystallized, and they no longer get access to the fluids because they have to lick the sugar first because it's just hardened.
This is some good tips right here. I have to change something afterwards. All right, Jake, when do you take out your sugars?
Well, same as the protein, to be honest, every about 4 days. I think I've just got a routine really there of just, every about 4 days. And I always use them mostly though, sugar snaps. And if I'm not using that, I'll use one of my own though. And I think they've both got like preservatives in them, because I stick a little bit of preservatives in mine, which I'm kind of hoping keeps a lot of the yeast away, because that's what the preservative is for. I think it's potassium sorbate. But without that, I'd probably change it every like 2 days. But 4 days for me normally. And I do overfeed them, but then I'll just chuck out the whole batch if I give them too much.
I can respect that. What I'm doing myself is with my bigger colonies, they get a tube with sugar. Like I have one of your feeders right now, Jake, with like 10% sugar water. No, 10% sugar snaps, and then just the rest is sugar water. And the ants have, in a matter of 2 weeks, drink. If it's half empty, and I'm sitting here wondering whether I should actually empty it completely and clean it and wait a little bit before feeding again. The Nikos, they drink an entire test tube in around 2 hours, so they are no issue. But generally, with a smaller colony, I would always say 48 hours. Generally, what I do with smaller colonies is I feed them a dish with protein and a dish with cotton with sugar water on. And if it's sugar snaps, I just squirt it on the cotton. Or if it's any other honey, if it's honey, I put a little bit of water in, and then I put it again on the cotton, just because I lost nearly an entire flowers colony one day after hibernation, because they were so sugar happy that they just put the head in and never took the head up. And it's a lot of the learned by doing, and I was very lazy before. I removed it a little. I gave them too much honey, and it was quite sticky. But after that day with so many dead ants, simply just having their heads into the honey, I'm a lot more careful now. I don't know if you guys have anything more to add to this topic. If you have, it's now to add. And with that,
Well, I don't know. We could talk about honey. I don't know. I'm not really a fan of the old honey because, like you said, most of the time they just get stuck in it. Although if you put it on cotton wool, it's all right. But yeah.
No, I agree. When a lot of people ask me what do you recommend, I generally say buy it from an ant store, because then it's better. But else, I would say sugar water, 1 to 4, mix up a little bit, and then just mix it until you can't see the sugar crystals, and it's just like water. And then I would squirt that on a cotton. That's what I'm recommending to all new ant keepers who ask. But else, I would go for the store's products, like sugar snaps, like sunburst, like Wakushi also have some kind of solution. And it sounds like you also have a solution, Jake, or at least I'm making.
Oh, not yet, no. Although mine's going to be specific. It's just for Camponotus.
Can I ask what's the difference then?
Some of the Camponotus species, they like to have a little bit of like urea in their like sugar water. It just kind of helps their gut bacteria. So I think it kind of needs to be made, because a lot of these species, like from Australia, they like to do it. And we can't really I don't know, it's why they kind of struggle a bit, I think, because they haven't got the access to the stuff that they need.
That's a very interesting point, something I've never thought of. I do love when people go a little bit above and actually do kind of a species specific thing. So looking forward to hearing the how it goes if in the future, if you start selling and stuff like that. But ladies and gentlemen, we have now talked about the best conditions to keep ants in, and it is time for this week's ant news. And this is, of course, not the news of what's going on here now, but generally just what have happened in this past few days. And while you two think of your news, I mean, Jake, you have something you've discovered today that may be relevant. My ant news would be things that worked and didn't work for me in 2022 by ant notes. The reason I chose this as my ant news, it's actually been quite a busy week. EA also made a 2022 video, but this video was just really interesting because I just love how honest he is. He is just, I don't get this, I don't like this. And it's not really, it's of course his own opinions, but it's something I don't really say, because if I struggle with something, I just find a way out. And it's simple, like with cleaning a Venus. I close off the chambers and then I clean the Venus, and he was just like, I don't like that you have to clean it. I would much rather just have them put the trash in the outworld and this whole space not being there. And it's a video worth watching, and it's a video by Ant Notes. things that worked and didn't work for me in 2022. Lynn, do you have any ant news?
Well, with the Mesocephalodes, 2 barbarous workers passed away. One of the miners and one of the media casts. They were dead in the outworld. I'm not sure if they have been fighting or if they just passed away from natural causes. Other than that, the colony seems to be doing very well. They are actively pulling the cotton, and they actually have some new fresh pupae. So I am eager for them to take off.
Damn, that's not bad. These mesa workers, were those hatched within the colony or added to the colony?
Everything has been hatched inside of the colony that they have. These are, of course, the barbarous workers that have been added, but they hatched inside of the colony.
Okay, so they have not lived for very long, but
Yeah, I'm not
That's how it
sure why. That's the question. But as long as the rest of the colony is doing well, it's okay for me.
Yeah, it's important to note when there's death and note when it's important death or just natural causes. Jake, do you have any ant news this week?
Well, I've had a lot of issues. Starting from a few hours ago, I've realised my Harpagnathos have got a full-blown mite infestation. And, well, it's basically because I haven't been cleaning them enough. And a little bit as well because they use the carcass of their dinner sometimes to, like, block off the doorway, I think. And, yeah, I thought it was sand, and I've been looking in for a few days trying to figure out where this sand had come from. And it turned out it literally was thousands of mites, I think. So, yeah, the Hoover went in and I've proper hoovered the hell out of everything and moved the colony into another room in like as far away from everything as it can get, and hoping for the best. Although they have lost like 3 workers in like one day, and I'm hoping I'm not too late, but they seem to be like dropping like flies at the minute.
What I want to add is it's these big white mites. It's the ones I personally never want to see because there's probably 1,000 different mite species, but as far as I've known in my time, it's the big white mites are never a good sign. So yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah.
So
that's all right. Fingers crossed, they'll.
Yeah,
Right.
best of wishes. What are your plans to get them better?
Well, I was speaking to Ryan and he recommended I put a bit of soil in, and he wanted to put some lemon in, so I'm going to do both those, and I've had good luck with lemon in the past, so yeah, I'll definitely be chucking loads of lemon in like regularly for quite a while, and then just whip them and boil it. Like I'm going to pre-boil my like insects, because the Harpagnathos, they will take dead insects like just fine, to be honest. It's just kind of, they do quite a good little act when they're hunting, I think. But
yeah, well, I want to say from here, I think all listeners of the Ant Pod will say good luck. This will be another thing to follow in the upcoming weeks, I guess. But yeah, guys, this has been a debate about the best conditions for keeping ants. I want to say thank you for listening in. The podcast releases new episodes every Wednesdays, and from this episode and onwards, I can say that we are also producing care guides once every few weeks, so there'll come a care guide hopefully quite soon about Carabera diversa. So that's an episode I'm personally looking forward to recording. And if there's a topic you want to hear about, send it in to the Antpod Instagram. With that, you will hear more from us at the Antpod next week.